This is a Flying Cow production.
Book 1, Water. Book 2, Earth. Book 3, Fire. Long ago, Nickelodeon introduced a series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It combined great anime-style animation, strong storytelling, heart, and humor. It was great, and everyone that saw it loved it. Until one day, a terrible movie came out which everyone hated. But my co-host Lauren Collins knows none of this because he's never seen the show. And that's why we are watching every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I believe this could be Lauren's new favorite show. Or at least top 20.
Well, hello and welcome back to Comets and Cabbages here on the Flying Cow. Comets and Cabbages, of course, the show where we talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and I am currently training a young RoosterPig.
Well, my name's Amanda Van Heil, and I was also going to bring up those RoosterPig hybrids, so I'm going to have one too.
And I'm Lauren, and I wanted to make some kind of Sergio Leone reference here, and I could not figure one out. So we'll insert that in post.
Oh, yeah. And I, too, enjoyed the movie Shane. Yeah. That was my my other one. Maybe we should share these beforehand. Although I do like being surprised by what you guys say. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But yes, we are here today talking about another episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The episode in question is Zuko Alone. This is, kind of an interesting episode because really the only character of the main cast that we see, at least, in the main story, is Zuko. It really is Zuko alone. And then a whole bunch of new characters that we either haven't met or have never heard of before.
I think the ostrich horse is technically a recurring character at this point.
At this point, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have a name though.
No, it doesn't. We should give it
We're
one.
going to call him Clyde.
Actually, Clyde is a good name. I like that. Clyde.
Should Avatar animals have merged names too? If they're going to be like ostrich horses, should they have like, I don't know, a good name for a horse? I don't know what a good name for an ostrich is, so this already falls apart immediately.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Winifred,
I'm not friends
maybe.
with many ostriches.
All right. Well, I mean, don't really have a whole lot else to say. I mean, I will say, and I'm going to get into it, but this storyline, at least the main storyline, there's kind of two things going on. We've got like a flashback backstory, which in my opinion is the more interesting side of this episode. But then like the main storyline very much follows the template of the famous Western Shane or the famous samurai story Yojimbo. Though there are a lot of different versions of Yojimbo, so it depends on which one you pick up. But obviously this episode borrowing heavily from, pop culture. But honestly, I think in this format, it really kind of works. I will say, if you are unfamiliar with either one of those stories, it's basically this episode without the flashbacks. Basically. Good. I mean, good. I will say I actually really enjoy the movie Shane. It's one of those that for years I had never seen, but every time somebody like their favorite movie was a Western, it was always Shane.
Yeah. And you're right. The Man with No Name movies would play very differently if you constantly had flashbacks to the Man with No Name's childhood. Like,
yeah, be a little bit different.
yeah.
But let's go ahead and let's jump into this episode. Like I have said, it is called Zuko Alone. It was directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Elizabeth Welch, and it originally premiered March 12th, 2006. And this episode kind of picks up, like we said, the last two are kind of transposable. It doesn't really matter in what order you watch them because they both kind of pick up directly after the episode. Well, I mean, Avatar Day doesn't have that much to do with what happens next in The Blind Bandit. It's more picking up from the swamp. But this episode definitely follows up with Zuko and Iroh's storyline in Avatar Day, in that, you know, Zuko is, as the title suggests, on his own. You know, after leaving Iroh, he has set off to, you know, I guess, forge his own path. What exactly he thinks he's going to do away from Iroh is never really clear. I'm just like, you're just upset because your uncle doesn't want you to steal all of your stuff. Okay.
He's still a kid, technically. He can have a fit and, you know, pout and run off. And
I mean, he's definitely like an older teenager. So
yes, he is. But
I will say, though, this opening shot, like, you know, very glowery, very like samurai style,
yes,
like solo shot we're getting here. Really kind of cool. You know, with the hat over the eyes and the shade and everything like that. Really, really cool little image. But yeah, he comes upon this town. I mean, I will say at first, you know, we just see him like alone, and we see him find a man cooking on a campfire, and it looks like, he's gonna steal that man's food, until he realizes that the man is cooking for his pregnant wife. And then he decides, I'm not going to do that.
At least he has enough morals to not steal from pregnant women.
Right. Yes. It's like Zuko is an okay guy, at least. He's not willing to steal from pregnant women.
No.
Good for you. It's like that is the level of his morality.
That's where he draws the line. I draw the line at pregnant women.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's honestly a good line to draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If there's just been a kid around, it's like, nah, that's fine. But, you know, he's very, very pro-life. Like if he's pregnant, definitely not stealing.
Yeah. But then he comes into a town and, you know, is just buying some supplies and is quickly harassed by some soldiers who are basically just thugs and bandits in this town. They're really just kind of using their authority. They're like the soldiers that were conscripted to take over the real soldiers when they left for war. Mm-hmm. And they're really not soldiers at all. They're just using the uniforms, like I said, as their means to steal from other people. And you know, they steal from Zuko, and then a little kid throws an egg at them, and you know, Zuko just kind of is like, yeah, I'm not scared of you, leave me alone. And they leave. But that is when we are introduced to another character from this episode, Lee. And basically Zuko forms this like bond with Lee, where Lee basically just keeps getting in trouble and Zuko keeps like standing up for him, kind of thing. But here's the thing. I don't know about you guys, but I did not understand how Zuko formed a bond with this kid at all, because he is annoying as shit.
He was really good at ignoring the kid, and the kid was like, I can do what I want. It doesn't bug Zuko.
Yeah, like this kid is super annoying, and honestly, like half of the problems in this episode are caused by this kid, and eventually I'm just like, please beat the kid up. Maybe he'll learn from it. You know,
I think to some extent, what we've seen of Zuko over the past 26 episodes, 27 episodes now, is that Zuko finds most people annoying. I think
it's true.
So
his line is really
tuning people out.
Yeah, so he's developed a certain amount of just patience with literally everyone he interacts with.
I mean, he has been with Iroh, who was wonderful, but I imagine being with Iroh all the time's got to be exhausting.
Yes, to a gloomy teenager, Iroh is exhausting. So
this is a kid. The kid gets some credit just for being little and uninformed. Also, giving him food, so make some allowances since he's filling his belly.
Yeah, because Lee does invite him to his house, where we are introduced to a very weird assortment of animals, all of which are mixed with pigs.
They're so cute. I like the little cow, but I like the sheep
little
too.
Pig cow, a pig sheep, and apparently mine and Amanda's favorite, the rooster pig.
He's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want one. Like, I want one to like play with.
I will say I didn't clock till I was pulling clips for this that all of the animals were mixed with pigs. I was just like, is that like a special breeding program that they did? Like, how did they get all like pig-based animals here?
Yes, that's how they did.
I guess pigs are very versatile.
Exactly. We don't want to see their breeding facility.
I don't want to know how they came about. They just came about.
Yes.
I will say, I'm rather intrigued as to what a cow pig tastes like. Because I mean,
does it taste like bacon wrapped sirloin?
Maybe.
No.
I mean, because pigs are much richer in fat than cows are, but who doesn't love a good steak?
I would like to taste a cow pig. I agree. Also, for what it's worth, I like the look of the cow pig and the rooster pig more. The sheep pig just looks like lazy, honestly. It's just
honestly, the sheep pig looks like it needs a haircut.
Yeah.
Like it really looks honestly, and also the sheep pig looks the most disgruntled of all of them too.
Yeah.
It's like it knows that it is the least attractive of all of these animals, and it's just like, I'm a sheep pig.
The breeding facility for how they make these animals reminds me. Some years ago, I went to was it the Chicago Zoo or something like that?
Yeah,
and they had their one of the tanks had both beavers and ducks. I think it was, if I remember correctly. And I stood there, like next to the tank, as the beavers would swim by and the ducks would swim by and whatnot, waiting, trying to get a picture of both of them in the same shot, just so I could then put it on social media and call it a platypus breeding facility. And they just did not want to cooperate in my photography goals.
No. Well, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know what exactly they're doing on this farm that all of their animals are pig-based, but they are. But yeah, the family basically takes Zuko in. And I will say it's really weird the way that this bond forms, because, Lee is like, I'll take you, we'll take care of your ostrich horse. And Zuko's just like, no, it's okay. And then he's like, we'll feed you too. And Zuko, you can tell, obviously he almost stole from a man with his pregnant wife. So he's hungry. But he's willing to do that. But when then they offer to feed him, he's just like, no, I'm going to be on my way. And then they're like, why don't you work with my husband and then we'll feed you? And then he's just like, okay. Like, I'm like, that series of events doesn't really make sense. They offer him work and then he's willing to stay. That doesn't.
Well, see, that way he feels like he's earned the food.
I mean, maybe
despite the fact that he was stealing all this time and had no problem stealing, now all of a sudden he's like,
yeah,
oh, no, I work for myself.
It does kind of track. Like Zuko does have an internal sense of honor. He, and I think that's part of why he's run away from Iroh is like he recognizes Iroh's kind of right. He shouldn't be doing this. He doesn't need Iroh reminding him of that.
Right.
But yeah, when someone gives him the chance to do the honorable thing according to his ethos, he'll work for his food.
I think there's also some other things coming into play here because, let's not forget that Zuko has lived in the Fire Nation his entire life and basically has been taught that the Fire Nation is for lack of a better term, the superior nation. And so I think that he just automatically kind of looks down on these people, but also he recognizes that he's in disguise right now, so they don't know who he is, but really he's an enemy of the Earth Kingdom. So it's like any prolonged time with these people maybe isn't the best idea. But yeah, I think there's some interesting things going on in Zuko's head. But
that way to look at, in fact, is that like you said, how the Fire Nation looks at the other kingdoms is to Zuko like robbing like an Earth Kingdom person. They're their vassals. They're they owe he is one of their betters. He doesn't have problems stealing from them. But he might, on an internal level, just not want to take charity from them. Like that feels like
that's kind of what I was thinking. Is that's why he wanted to work for it. He's like, no, I'm not letting these Earth Kingdom peasants just give me things.
So stealing from the peasants is fine. Working for his food from the peasants,
because stealing is a form of work. Like he had to go about getting it. He's still the one that took it. Nobody just gave it to him willingly.
Yeah, but he's not going to take their doesn't want to take their just charity,
right?
Because he doesn't need that.
No. But yeah, so he does decide to stay with them. And it's at this point that we're introduced to kind of the flashback nature of this story as well. So, while this, kind of samurai Western is going on, we're also seeing flashbacks to Zuko's earlier life, not only before he was banished, before he was burned by his own father, but also we meet for the first time Zuko's mother, which obviously Amanda and I have seen this series before, but Lauren, how shocked were you to see Zuko's mother in this story?
Shocked, not
surprised, not expecting. Like, I mean, were you expecting to meet Zuko's mother at this point?
At this, I don't know. Not really one way or the other. The show's had its flashbacks in the past.
Sure.
We obviously.
But Zuko's mother hasn't really been mentioned a lot.
No, she hasn't. We've obviously
surely there was some curiosity as to who she was, where she was, that kind of thing.
I hadn't given it an awful lot of thought, to be honest. I think more about obviously Sokka and Katara's parents, since they're referenced, and there seems to be some kind of question as to whatever happened to their mom. I think she passed. Is that what happened?
Katara's mom, was killed in a raid by the Fire Nation.
Okay.
Yeah, they've referenced that a few times.
But no, I think I might have just in the back of my head assumed that we have a case where the Fire Lord is just an all-powerful dictator type person, and he has someone he had children with. Like,
okay. So you just thought maybe she was in the background, not necessarily even absent, just not important.
Just it never occurred to me that he had much of his mother had much of a role in his life, in his upbringing.
So what did you think to see her now in his life?
Oh, I liked her portrayal in this episode. I liked her introduction and seeing the kind of influence she had over a young Zuko and what she meant to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't something I was expecting or not expecting, but I enjoyed what the episode gave us.
Right. I mean, it definitely, because, you know, from you would imagine if Ozai was Zuko's only parent that he would have turned out a lot more like Azula. But you know, obviously, you know, Zuko has more of like what you might call a moral compass. So, you know, you do kind of wonder, did that just come from Iroh? But now that you see Mom, it's like, oh, okay, that might be where that comes from.
Yeah.
Amanda,
the whole like difference between Azula and Zuko is something like that. You know, only this season has really started to give us, because Azula wasn't around.
Because yeah, exactly. We haven't really seen much of Azula,
and we got
Azula
some
till now.
slight hints towards Zuko just not being a total villain last season, but it was basically stuff like he doesn't think it's like he thinks it's a bad idea to like sacrifice your own men for no reason. Like he was interested in protecting his own people, but you didn't get a lot of sense about him having any sort of moral code regarding other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also, you know, like we've said, he was raised in the Fire Nation under this idea that the Fire Nation is superior to all. He's a child. What basis does he have to question that?
Yeah. Last season basically gave us sort of Zuko as the more angry person versus Iroh as the contrast. This season has given us more of, okay, Zuko has a moral code, like you said. Azula is just a psychopath. It's
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she has zero ability to empathize. So I think
which we actually see even more of in this episode with her as a child.
She freaking abuses animals.
Yeah.
Like, that's a red flag.
Yeah. But Amanda, what are your thoughts of Zuko's mom?
She is very nice. I often wonder why she didn't have much of an influence on Azula and why she didn't like give Azula a bunch of crap for, like, for example, he flat out shows like, this is how Azula feeds the turtles, and she gets onto him, and I'm just like, maybe you should go say something to your child that actually is actively throwing rocks at turtle ducks.
I will say
turtle ducks were my favorite animals of this episode.
So cute.
Yeah,
I love the turtle ducks.
Oh yeah, I mean the turtle ducks were great, a great design. But I will say, you know, obviously as this backstory progresses, we see, you know, obviously Zuko interacting with his mom, see that she's a much more, you know, maternal figure, much more caring figure in his life than his father is. His father's more kind of standoffish. And if anything, if any interaction we see with Zuko in this episode, kind of ashamed of him kind of thing. But, you know, we see also young Zuko interacting with young Azula, and she's super manipulative to the point where, you know, when one of her friends does something better than she does, she pushes them down, you know, can't stand anybody being better than her. Super manipulative, even to her mom. I think part of, at least in the earlier part of the episode, Mom doesn't realize the darkness of Azula for a little bit, because Azula's kind of plays the I'm the sweet little girl card kind of thing. And it's not until later when Azula flat out is just like, why do we care about Grandpa? He's going to die soon. To which point, I think Zuko's mom, whose name we discover later to be Ursa, says, I think what we're all thinking, which is,
what is wrong with that child?
I mean, it's just like, wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's some issues here.
I feel like she just was constantly with Ozai also, so he had like his influence on her the whole time.
Well, also we do see in this episode Ozai praising her as a fire-bending prodigy. We've heard this about Azula before, that she's a fighter-bending prodigy. So I think when he realized the depth of her skill as opposed to Zuko, he took a more active interest in her and probably became kind of, I'll take care of her, you take care of him type of thing. I mean, you know, as it's even said, Azula is named after her grandfather, Azulon. Whereas Zuko, where did his name come from?
The Z.
As
I mean,
the old
I
tunnel too.
Sure. I will say I realized in this episode, you know, you've got their great grandfather, Fire Lord Sozin, who started the war. Then you've got his son Azulon, and then you've got Ozai, and then you've got, of course, Zuko and Azula. Now, obviously, then you've got Iroh, but all of the Fire Lords and the descendants that are expected to take over seem to have Z names. Now, obviously, that wasn't necessarily the plan because initially, and I don't know how much you guys have, I think we might have mentioned this at one point, but Iroh is the oldest. So he
And he was
was
supposed to take
initially expected to take over as the Fire Lord, but Ozai makes a successful bid to basically skip over Iroh in favor of Ozai. Like,
Okay, but
it
do we
is,
think that Ozai killed his dad?
well, I mean, honestly, this was speculation I wanted to get into later in the episode.
Okay, cool.
Let's
I was
hold
going to say
this.
successful bid sounds like a really great euphemism for killed. his
I
dad.
know. We'll talk about the particulars of it in just a little bit.
Okay.
But like I said, I think we might have brought this up, but have you guys ever thought much about the fact that Iroh seems obviously older than Ozai, yet Ozai is the Fire Lord? Like, what did you guys, before this episode, how did you guys think that Ozai became the Fire Lord over Iroh? Or did
I
you
never
think
really
that's
thought
a-
much
I
of
don't
it.
know,
I guess
thought?
I figured it was like it happened like after they left.
I think on some level, I might have just assumed up until this point, Iroh was a great uncle.
Oh, okay.
Because he presents as a grandfather, not as a normal uncle age.
Sure.
It's
But
like
I mean, it seems like, you know, he does seem quite a bit older than Ozai, but it was probably just a situation where, you know, Azulon had Iroh, you know, probably when he was a younger man, and then had Ozai, you know, 10 to 15 years later.
yeah.
And it might not be that big of an age gap. It might just be Iroh didn't age as well.
It could
I
be.
mean, obviously, he's the one off fighting wars.
He's off fighting
the one
wars
off
and he's
in
eating
the
a lot.
trenches.
And
Yeah.
Ozai is like constantly pampered. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's enough
because,
to
you
age
know,
somebody.
before this, they refer to Iroh as General Iroh, whereas Ozai is just Prince Ozai.
Yeah. Iroh's lost more hair. That does tend to like visually age him more. And honestly, in both live adaptations, they've kind of run up against this a little bit because, like in the movie, they cast a guy who you remember the actor's name, Clay.
Actually, I don't remember that guy's name.
But yeah, but he presented like as a father age to Zuko, not as a grandfather type. And the fella from Mandalorian who's playing him in the Netflix version, like
Paul Sun-Young Lee,
yes. They've dressed him and, you know, makeup and hair like is to again make him evoke the animated Zuko, but still as age wise, he's like I don't know, maybe in his 50s, something like that.
I mean, honestly, I would have always said that Iroh looked to be in his 50s as well.
Yep.
So, I mean,
that would make sense. I mean, let's say he's 50 and Ozai is like 45. That would be
45 or even late 30s.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But no, I really hadn't given an awful lot of thought to what other than just assuming he might be a great uncle and, you know, got passed over that way.
Sure.
You know, the Fire Lord rules, we already know they have certain kind of challenge rules there in the Fire Nation.
Right. Yeah.
You just got beaten out for the role like they do in Wakanda.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as we see in this episode, you know, number one, you know, we see basically first thing I want to point out about Iroh is that we only see him in one instance in this episode, and it's when he's writing a letter home, and he's basically, making a joke about, fighting the Earth Kingdom or whatever. And I wrote down in my notes, I was like, it feels weird the way that Iroh seems to be in step with the Fire Nation dogma in this instance. Obviously he's been associated with the Fire Nation up until the end of the last season, but he's always kind of presented as having his own morality and maybe not always completely lining up with the Fire Nation believes. But in that one clip, I'm like, that's the most like in line with the Fire Nation rhetoric that I've ever seen Iroh, and it was kind of weird. Also, I think they gave him like darker hair rather than his traditional gray.
Yeah,
so that was weird as well. But we see that where he's still kind of lighthearted, and then we see Ursa receiving the letter about the death of Liu 10, and very shortly after hear that Iroh's on his way home because he basically has just lost the will for the fight in Ba Sing Se after the death of his son, and is coming home. And of course, Ursa and Zuko are just like, this sucks. We loved Liu 10, feel bad for Iroh. But, both Zuko and later we see Ozai are just like, he's a coward. He ran away. All this kind of stuff. So really drawing a line here in this family. But
Azula and Ozai.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I say
You said
that
Zuko.
wrong? Oh, did I say Zuko? I meant Azula.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, cool.
Anyway, because Zuko feels bad, Azula does not. Azula and anyway, pretty quickly we see that Ozai has arranged a meeting with his father so that his kids can show off and all of this kind of stuff. And obviously, they're going through different things. Azula shows off her training and how good she is. And Zuko, not wanting to be outdone, is like, and also because Azula eggs him on, it's just like, you'll never catch up, that kind of thing. Zuko tries to show off what he's doing. Obviously, Zuko is several stages down from where Azula is at this point in time. And, I will say there's a very sweet instance where, Zuko kind of falls and, he feels like he's failed. And Ursa, his mom, is just like, that's what I love about you. You keep getting up. You keep trying. Basically everything that you have achieved is through hard work. You never give up. But Fire Lord Azulon, who we see in shadow, is basically just like, hey, look, guys, I'm done with this song and dance. What the hell are you here to talk about? I don't want to be entertained anymore. Just tell me what you got to say and then leave.
This is an awful grandpa.
Oh, he really is. I mean, the line of Fire Lords, don't seem to be very nice people. Obviously, Sozin started the war, Azulon continued it, and you do kind of wonder, if being passed over for Fire Lord was kind of the best thing that ever happened to Iroh. But when the family leaves, basically Ozai makes a play for the throne. And, at least from what we see, Azulon then is like, how dare you ask me to pass over Iroh? Maybe you should feel the same the same that he's had to deal with. And then we leave because we leave with Zuko. Of course, Azula comes in because she has zero feelings and just starts taunting Zuko that Ozai is going to kill him. And Zuko, doesn't believe it, runs and, runs into Mom. Mom finds out the situation. And the next thing that we get of that storyline is that basically Zuko is woken up by his mom, basically saying, no matter what you might hear, know that anything that I did because I love you. And then she disappears into the night, so far as we know, to never be seen by Zuko again. So here is the question. And I think that it heavily implies something. But what do you guys think happened here? Because, another thing that I left out that's very important. They wake up to not only find that Ursa is gone, but Fire Lord Azulon is dead.
I think Ozai killed him.
You think Ozai killed him?
Or it could have been Azula.
Lord, what are your thoughts?
I just assumed Ozai killed him. If I had to do if I had to just guess at the order of operations here, it would be that, and all of this is speculative, obviously, is that Azula's not necessarily lying, that Zuko is going to be the sacrificial calf here, to make it even with Iroh. That seems like the kind of cruel thing, like an evil Solomon character, like
Azulon
try to do. It's like, it will make it even. We kill your kid too.
I guess Ursa could have killed him.
I will say here is
out.
exactly what I have always, and I think it's been backed up by other materials.
Yeah.
But Azulon definitely. I really don't think that there's any question. Azulon ordered Ozai to kill his son.
Yeah.
I think that then when Ursa found out about what happened, she went to Ozai and basically said, I will take care of your father for you and then I will leave if you will promise to take care of my son.
That makes the most sense.
That tracks. That flows better than what I was trying to construct. Basically, I was going to involve
because I think if
agreeing to die instead of
I think if
Ozai taking it out.
If it was Ozai that killed him, why would Ursa have to leave? There's no reason.
Because then I would be thinking, okay, why isn't? Because my first thought is like, okay, why didn't she just take Zuko with her if she's trying to like flee?
Well,
but,
then
if
Ozai might go after them.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
But if she killed Azulon and like had an agreement with Ozai, because clearly Ozai didn't care if he died, was just like, okay,
right. Well, because
Zuko,
now
I'll kill your dad.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about Ursa anymore. We just say that Azulon died because I'm assuming that she probably poisoned him.
That's what I was.
It wasn't like a stab or anything like that. But we know, we're not going to look into it. No, can't think of the word, but we're not going to explore his exactly. No investigation. We're not going to explore the death. She leaves. She's basically kind of backdoor banished without anybody, hearing about it. But this way he gets to be Fire Lord, because they can just say, oh, my dad wanted me to be Fire Lord. Okay.
Yeah. My other theory was that Ozai and Azula did it together, and like Ozai gave Azula the chance to do her first ever kill.
Yeah, I mean,
but it makes more sense for Ursa to have poisoned him.
Yeah, because honestly, I feel like if either Ozai or Azula would have done it, I don't think they would have done it in as hideable a way as something like poison. I think they would have wanted to actually like maim him, and that would have risen some red flags. So yeah, I definitely, my headcanon is definitely that it was Ursa simply to protect especially because of the speech that she gives Zuko. You know, everything that I've done has been to protect you because I love you, basically.
Yeah. I admit, based on this episode, not having seen what y'all have, I wasn't taking it for granted that Ursa was still alive. They said she was gone. I was willing to assume it's like, oh, that's just because like they don't want to say she's dead. And like,
well, I mean, we do see her like leaving at least the chamber. I think it's implied there that she's leaving the palace. I mean, honestly, even with that, there's no, you know, there's nothing being said that they didn't track her down and kill her. But that is not going to be discussed or mentioned or anything like that at this point. But yeah, I will say, you know, again, as I mentioned, the flashback is really the most interesting part of this story. But let's get back to the other bit, because basically, yeah, honestly, what really doesn't work for me about that whole bit is how annoying that kid is. Like, I really don't care. I just don't care about anything that happens to him because he's just super annoying. But he and Zuko do form a bond. Zuko teaches him how to use the broadswords because he catches him having stolen the swords, and is actively out there blunting them, just sticking them into trees. Because he's an asshole. But yeah, he does teach him a little bit, and then he like gives him like a ceremonial dagger, and you know, he leaves and all this kind of stuff. And then Mom comes after Zuko and is just like, you know, he attacked the soldiers with a knife. I don't know where he got a knife, and Zuko's just like, shit. And you know, she's like, they're gonna send him off to war. I know you don't owe us anything, but can you please help us? That kind of thing. And Zuko comes and he basically takes down all of the soldiers single-handedly, but the last one is an earthbender, and he does get a bit of the upper hand, and Zuko ends up having to reveal that he is a firebender. Now, I will say, in my memory of this episode, I just remember him revealing himself as a firebender and then the town turning on him. I did not remember that he basically just completely outs himself and says, not only am I a firebender, but I am the rightful heir to the Fire Nation throne. And I'm just like, Zuko,
you could have just said you were a refugee from the Fire Nation.
Exactly. No, he's got to claim his birthright in this moment. I'm like, this is not the crowd for this. They don't give a shit. In fact, they hate you, and they do. I do wonder if he had just claimed that he was, as you say, a refugee fire, you know, from the Fire Nation, if maybe they would have still accepted him. But because he you know, insists on claiming his birthright, they're just like, yeah, we don't want you here either.
Yeah. He should
just honestly, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
The Zuko with no name. There's my Sergio Leone reference. But no, he had to brag about his lineage.
Yeah, because I mean that's
all about that honor.
Yeah, he is so tied into he refuses to give up this identity because it is the only thing that makes him still feel like he is the person that he's supposed to be. You know, and it you know, this is not the only time that that refusal to let go of that identity has really done him in. But, you know, this is where it's done most pointedly, because it's just like, you had been fine if you had just let go of your name, if you just stuck with, you know, not saying who you are and just, you know, I'm going to help this town. I'm going to help these people. Yes, I'm a firebender, but
of the Fire Nation.
Well, because here's the thing. If he had just said, I'm an exiled firebender, that would have been the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. if he had just said Zuko, they might not even assume he's that's Zuko.
I'm sure it's a popular name.
Probably
Yeah,
popular.
but
also like the wiki mentioned too is like he mentions he's the son of the Fire Lord, and someone else mentions like he was exiled by his father and whatnot. It's like like last season established that was not public knowledge, but funny that this season like his own.
I think it is public knowledge that he was exiled. It's
Well,
not
I mean,
necessarily
but
exiled
why he was
and
stuff like that. You're right.
Well,
that he was exiled is public
and
knowledge.
they don't mention that he was that's what happened.
Yeah, let me see.
I don't think.
Keep going.
But he
People
was
gossip.
disgraced by his father.
Yeah.
I think that some people were gossiping, and that's how they found out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Here it is. When Zuko reveals his identity, a man in the crowd shouts that Zuko's own father burned him. However, in the storm, it was implied that wasn't known, as Zuko's own crew was under the assumption he got the scar in a training accident.
Sure, but I mean, I will say they've probably been around, gossip and hearsay more than this crew that has been, traveling around, on a ship.
Yeah.
So, it probably leaked at some point.
Yeah, it was probably somebody from the Fire Nation was like mentioned it to somebody else who somebody from the Earth Kingdom heard it and it passed down. And
Because when we saw this Agni Kai, it's not like there were only 2 people there. There was a crowd. Honestly, I think if anything, Zhao spread it. Zhao let everybody know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because as we all know, Zhao wanted hugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
his own dad.
The best way to get them is by
burn
disgracing
me.
them.
I've never been burned by the Fire Lord.
No, my daddy loves me. He never burned me.
After all, at least in the movie, remember, movie Zhao was more than happy to tell literally everyone about that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But yeah, I will say this is the one part that does, if you've ever seen the movie, Shane, does differentiate from the movie because in the movie,
is there less firebending in Shane?
There's a little less. There's a little less firebending, but basically it's the same setup. Basically, a drifter comes into town who basically he doesn't want to fight, but you can tell that he can, and ends up basically protecting people, but ends up having to kill some people and then leaves the town. But when he leaves, they're sorry. Well, at least some of them are sorry to see him go. And it literally ends with a boy at the end calling after him, Shane, Shane, Shane. And it's just like, okay, I get where they get the annoying kid bit. So I'm kind of glad that this doesn't end with Lee going, Zuko! Zuko! So yeah, I'm good with that. But yeah, anything else that we want to share about this episode before we move on?
Can't think of anything.
No. All right, then let us go ahead and let us get into our segments with our My Cabbages moment.
My cabbages!
Yes, and this is, of course, the part of the episode where we discuss our favorite or most interesting scenes or moments from the episode. So, Amanda, we're going to start with you. What is your My Cabbages moment?
I mean, I do like seeing the RoosterPig, but I also all the cute little animals aside, I do like when Ursa is just like, what is wrong with that child?
Yeah. Lauren?
Man, I kind of want to go with just the sort of the flashbacks in general, but since I need something a little narrower than that, I think I'll go with the fight at the end. Partly because I think in the wiki notes this is like the first time we've seen Zuko fight just traditionally in a while.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've seen him fight as the Blue Spirit with the broadsword,
and
but
that was
the first time we've seen him
fight
as himself with the broadsword.
It also mentions I didn't clock this in the moment, but it's like apparently the only time in the series like he incorporates his swords and firebending at the same time, like to boost them or something.
And honestly, that's a really cool moment.
Which feels like a wasted opportunity for future episodes to not do that again.
Yeah.
But just a good showdown in the streets, like in a good old classic Western.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, I agree. Honestly, as I've said already, my favorite part of this episode really is the flashback stuff. I always remembered the flashback stuff, and I remembered this episode, but I forget that they're the same, that they're part of the same episode.
I do too.
Because they don't really have that much to do with each other. Except that it gives us, with Zuko being alone, it gives us more of a view into what Zuko is dealing with. But if I had to kind of pick a specific bit or at least idea within the flashbacks, I would say I really enjoyed the stuff between Zuko and Ursa, his mother. Just kind of seeing that relationship and seeing kind of how she informed the person that he is. Because really what I find very interesting is that, the first moment we see in these flashbacks is Zuko acting out for his mom the way that Azula acts, in kind of, some cruelty, which is kind of the way we were introduced to Zuko, as this kind of angry, person who would lash out at people. But as we see, that's really not, as we continue to see, as we learn more about Zuko, that's really not his character. So I find it interesting that that's what they opened up with. And then kind of, as we see him more with his mom, we see more of kind of this sweet, kind, caring boy who just tries his best, which is really kind of who Zuko is. So it's interesting to see at this point in the series. But yeah, let's get into now our Mako Award. This is, of course, the award that we give to our favorite or most interesting character. So, Lauren, who gets your Mako Award?
That kid. That kid was just no.
Lee?
Not Lee. No.
No.
As silly as it is to give it to like the turtle duck, it's Zuko, of course.
Sure.
There's no real competition here, I think. But I look forward to seeing what y'all's choices are.
Well, I
Amanda?
was with you. I was going to go with the kid also. Brilliant. Brilliant character. I'm going to go with Ursa because we don't really get to see her ever.
Yeah.
I'm learning that Zuko's a mama's boy. Never knew that.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say I am also going with Ursa. Obviously with a title like Zuko alone, Zuko seems like the most obvious. And honestly, he is a very interesting character in this. It is all about kind of seeing Zuko and how he reacts and where he comes from and all this.
I will concede I went with the obvious choice. Yes.
Yeah, but also this is the first time that we're introduced to Ursa, and to see, as I've said, the effect that she had on her son. And also at least to get hinted at what she was willing to do for her son. It adds a very interesting element to this backstory and this story of the royal family within the Fire Nation. It's just like, wow, you guys are kind of fucked up. But yeah, I found that very, very interesting. So let us get now into our rating for this episode on the Avatar State Meter. We can rate it anywhere from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, the show at full power, 1 being the worst, could deal it a fatal blow. So Amanda, where are you going to rank this episode?
I'll give it a 4. Get some really nice backstory there.
Sure. All right. Lauren.
I'm a real sucker for sort of certain cowboy Ronin type stories like Usagi Yojimbo or Jonah Hex or those sorts of things. You know, loner going from town to town, having his adventures, whatnot. This is a good development for Zuko in that sense. We get good flashbacks, exploration of his history that resonated with me. The stuff with his mom. If his mom had actually if they had depicted her dying, it would have frankly destroyed me a little bit in the moment. Because I lost my mom a few months ago. So
that's right.
But nonetheless, this episode had a lot that really, really worked for me pretty hard. So I'm not sure if this will ever happen again, but I'm giving it a 5.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That is the highest rating you have given an episode.
It's the highest rating any episode, and who knows? The next time we have an episode that doesn't have our main 3, and it's that doesn't have Aang or Zuko or Guitar, I'm sure it might happen again. But
so what you're saying is that we said from the beginning, your least favorite character was Aang. I mean, I would imagine that he's probably come up a little bit since he's dropped some of the more kiddish.
I think my least favorite of the main 4 is still Aang. It is still the original titular character of this show. Yes.
Yeah.
Avatar without the Avatar.
Yeah. I will say, honestly, if this was just the flashbacks, I probably would have given this a 4.5. But even with the construction of the main meat of the storyline, because I honestly do. I love the movie Shane, and I love this construction. I would have given it a 4. But I'm going to give it a 3.5 because what really kind of kills this episode for me is Lee. That kid is super unlikable. And I don't know why he needed to be so unlikable. Except that maybe they were saying that he saw himself in Lee, but himself in his flashbacks was nicer than Lee. So I don't get why Lee is such a little douchebag. I really don't. I'm like, if Lee were a kinder, more sympathetic character, I think I could have gotten behind this whole thing a little bit more, but he really drags down the whole thing. I literally just kept thinking, why do we care about Lee? Because I don't. I
guess Zuko just has a soft spot for kids, just in general. Maybe that's it.
Yes, and I guess if you can have a soft spot for that kid, you have a soft spot for any kid. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I do really like this episode, but Lee brings it down for me. 3.5. Sorry. But I will say, I do think that it is at this point that we should ask a very important question. A question so important it really drives this whole show. And that is, Lauren, is this your new favorite show?
No, but I am kind of a little bit afraid this might be my favorite episode of this show. Like by the time we get to the end of it,
sure,
that it might be. Yeah,
you have some good stuff coming up though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Has the show itself risen in your estimation, at least?
I mean, I guess generally speaking, I'm enjoying season 2 more than season 1.
Sure. And we kind of always anticipated that.
Mm-hmm. No, certain, and that's what I've always heard about.
There's less of the kiddishness.
It's not just the kiddishness, but I don't think the whole pursuit nature of season 1, where you basically have like Iroh and Zuko chasing Aang and the others while they're very, very slowly trying to make their way to the Northern Tribe. Yeah, like that format didn't do an awful lot for me.
Sure.
but without those kind of objectives at play here.
Isn't the next episode called The Chase?
I was just about to, I was gonna, yeah, I'm like, good news for you then, Lauren.
Yeah. Well, no, but even if that's limited to a single episode, it's the fact that it's being drawn out over that many episodes because, again, like I said, what the effect of that on season 1 was it makes Aang and Katara and Sokka look like they're bad at their job for taking that long to get to the North Pole. And it makes Iroh and Zuko look like they're really, really bad at their job for not being able to find these people any better than they can.
Sure.
So, and it's just naturally repetitive. Because I know I mentioned this a couple times, especially early in season 1, when it was like they show up to a town and then like the Fire Nation shows up and they have to beat the Fire Nation and flee.
Well, and I will say easily episode or season 1 is the most episodic of the series, whereas the later ones, because I don't know, I think this might be another issue where it wasn't until season 2 that they were given like, this is how long the rest of our series is going to go. Kind of thing. So they really kind of focused then on the journey and things like that. Obviously they put the clock more on it in the later seasons, but that is part of it because they're a little bit more driven, they're a little bit more focused. But yeah. All right, well then want to go ahead and let people know how they can get into contact with us. So of course you can contact us at the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. Make sure to check out everything we've got going on right now. Lots of great stuff on the podcast feed and the YouTube channel. I have recently released the video format for the first time of the 1994 season of The Academy. For anybody that's not familiar, The Academy is where we take a year, and myself and my co-hosts, Hannah Kiefer and Jack Allison, we break down the quote best films from that year and then decide what we would have chosen as best picture. It's a lot of fun. The 94 season was actually our first season. It used to only be available in podcast form, but it is now available in video form on YouTube, so you can check that out. We will also very soon be unveiling our next season for that, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep your eyes out for all of that. Amanda, what you got going on?
Well, you can find me on socials at Amanda Van Heil, and then you can find me on Twitch at Panda Princessa. You can also find me hosting the Shine Sparkers Metroid podcast, and then on Zelda Universe TV. And then I'm going to be at PAX East the 20th through the 23rd, I think, are the dates I'm going to be there. I'm going to be hosting 2 panels there, and then one of them is going to be streamed. That's going to be the Thursday at like 6 or 6:30 panel.
All right, Lauren.
All right. Find me on Twitter at Lauren Collins. If you're in the Atlanta area, I'm in Lend Me a Tenor at Act 3 in Sandy Springs from March 15th through the 30th. We open, as of the date of this recording, tomorrow. And much further in the future. So I won't plug this every episode. But again, if you're in the Atlanta area and want to come see a whole bunch of lawyers sing and dance on stage, the Atlanta Bar Association's Bard Show is going to be in November of 2024, and I'm in that. I'm helping to produce it.
So book your tickets now.
Book your tickets now. There are only 3 shows. It should be November 8th and 9th. I think more information about that will be out.
I mean, when I worked ticketing for that show, it sold out every single performance. So yeah, actually, you should get tickets as soon as possible.
It is why we had to we wanted to search out a theater that had like 500 seats. Because as I've discovered telling people about it over the last couple of years, people are intrigued by the notion of like a lawyer musical.
Acting lawyers, yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as Amanda hinted to, we will be back next time with the episode The Chase. But until that time, moo.
Mm.